So you're probably like us. You want to get a real handle on important topics, maybe without wading through tons of dense academic papers, right?
Right. Especially something like student development in higher ed, which honestly affects so much.
Exactly. So think of this as your curated deep dive. We've gathered insights from a bunch of different places to understand how the thinking about college student development has really changed.
Yeah, it's not static at all. It's constantly evolving, especially as student populations change and, well, new ideas come along. It's super important for folks working in student affairs, obviously.
But also just for anyone interested in higher education today, I think.
Definitely.
So what we've done is look at um, academic articles tracing how the theories evolved,
Hmm.
the waves concept.
Uh-huh. And then sources looking at how you actually connect theory to what you do on campus.
Yeah, the practical side. Plus, some critical takes that really challenge the older models.
And those big textbook overviews that kind of give you the lay of the land.
Right, and even some guiding questions that scholars are grappling with. So, our mission today.
Let's pull out the key shifts, the core ideas about how we understand student development now, and what the big focus areas seem to be.
Okay, let's do it. So, these waves, I keep
Mhm.
hearing that framing. Where did that come from?
Well, Jones and Stewart proposed this framework, I think it was back in 2016. It's a helpful way to see the progression, three waves, basically.
Okay, wave one.
Wave one, think late 19th century up to maybe the mid 20th century. The main focus was really on intellectual and moral development.
So, how students learn to think, how they figure out right from wrong, that kind of fundamental stuff.
Exactly. You've got things like Perry's scheme, how students' views on knowledge itself change, from simple black and white to more nuanced thinking.
Uh huh. And Kohlberg's work on moral stages.
That's another classic example. The key thing here was this idea of individual, sort of linear, step by step progress.
Gotcha. Okay, so what changed with wave two?
Wave two, roughly mid to late 20th century, starts to broaden things out. It brings in the psychosocial, the interpersonal aspects.
Ah, okay. So not just thinking, but also like identity, relationships.
Precisely. Chickering's seven vectors is probably the landmark theory here. Looking at things like managing emotions, developing purpose, building identity, much more holistic.
Right, I remember that one. It felt like a much bigger picture of the student.
It was, and crucially, this wave also started paying more attention to how the actual environment, the campus, the social setting, affects development.
Which makes total sense. Students aren't just brains in jars.
Not at all. So that leads us into the third wave, which is where we are now, basically late 20th century onwards. And this is where things get, well, really different.
How so?
This wave is heavily influenced by critical perspectives. Think feminist theory, critical race theory, queer theory. The emphasis shifts dramatically towards social justice, diversity, inclusion.
And intersectionality. Understanding how different identities overlap.
Absolutely central. It's about questioning the very assumptions of the earlier models. What does development even mean and for whom? People like Linda Sachs, Patricia King, they've really pushed this.
Wow. So it's moved from the individual student's internal journey to seeing that journey deeply intertwined with their social identities and the power structures around them.
You've got it. The lens just got way, way wider. And this shift towards critical frameworks is like a major theme in the stuff we looked at.
So scholars like Lange and Duran, they're saying these new lenses make us ask totally different questions about development.
Exactly. What even counts as development? Whose definition are we using? It forces a re-examination.
There's that book, right? Rethinking College Student Development Theory Using Critical Frameworks. Abe's, Jones, and Stewart.
Yes, that's a key one. They argue powerfully for reimagining all the core concepts, support, challenge, learning through a critical lens, always asking, how do power, privilege, and oppression operate here?
So it's not enough to just talk about, say, a student feeling challenged, that dissonance idea. You have to ask how their race or gender or class background shapes that experience of being challenged.
Precisely. Those identities aren't just minor details, they fundamentally shape the experience. They're interwoven.
Okay.
And so these critical approaches are really calling for student affairs and higher ed more broadly to prioritize social justice, to actively challenge those older models that might, even unintentionally, reinforce existing inequalities.
It sounds like a move away from assuming this universal student experience.
Definitely. That one-size-fits-all idea, it just doesn't hold up when you look closely through these critical lenses. It's about recognizing systemic issues, not just individual paths.
But if we're moving away from some of those big established theories, does it get harder to have a consistent way of understanding students? Like, what do we hold on to?
That's a really important question. And Abe's and her colleagues offer a potential answer. They suggest maybe we should focus less on specific named theories, which might fade, right? And more on what they call enduring theoretical constructs.
Enduring constructs. Like what?
Things like, well, dissonance, that experience of grappling with conflicting ideas, or
Hmm.
agency, the student's sense of control, their ability to make choices and act, and context, the undeniable influence of their environment.
Ah, I see. So these are more like fundamental concepts that show up across different theories, or even without a specific theory attached.
Exactly. They argue these core ideas give us a more stable, flexible foundation for understanding students, regardless of which specific theoretical flavor you might be using, or even if you're combining ideas. It helps you analyze the situation.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like having a toolkit of core concepts rather than just one big instruction manual.
Kind of, yeah. Now, all this theory talk is great, but the rubber has to meet the road, right? How does this actually play out on campus?
Yeah, that connection between theory and practice is always the challenge, isn't it? The Garvey book, the one on case studies, that seems to tackle this head on.
It really does. Case studies for student development theory, advancing social justice and inclusion. What's great is how explicitly it connects using theory to the goal of promoting social justice and inclusion.
So, using real life examples.
Yeah, case studies showing how understanding theoretical concepts, especially through that critical intersectional lens, can help practitioners address real issues facing students related to race, gender, class, ability, you name it.
It's about making theory a tool for equity, then, not just an academic exercise.
Precisely. The book talks about practical strategies and policies, programs, services, even curriculum design and campus climate, all aimed at creating a more equitable environment.
And it mentions student voice, too, right? Empowering students.
Hugely important. Listening to students, involving them in shaping their own experiences in the campus environment. And crucially, it also stresses that for professionals, this isn't something you just learn once.
Ah, the continuous learning piece.
Absolutely. Constant reflection, examining your own assumptions and practices. It's ongoing work.
Okay, so that's the very practical, justice-oriented application. What about just getting a solid overview of the whole field if someone's newer to this?
That's where something like the patent book, Student Development in College, comes in. It's considered a pretty standard, comprehensive text.
Right, the kind that covers the major areas: cognitive, psychosocial, identity, moral development, the whole spectrum.
Exactly. It lays out many of the foundational theories, Chickering, Perry, Aston, those kinds of figures, and discusses their strengths but also their limitations, especially in light of newer thinking.
So it gives you the historical context, but also brings it up to date.
Yeah, it does a good job of exploring those core developmental processes during college and looking at how individual student factors, social influences, and the campus environment all play a part.
And does it also emphasize diversity and inclusion like the other sources?
It does, yes. It mirrors that theme, highlighting how social identities, race, ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic status, etc., significantly impact student experiences and development.
Okay, and presumably it offers practical advice too.
Definitely. Guidance on applying theory to develop effective support programs, ways to meet the diverse needs of today's students. It helps practitioners tailor their approach.
It's really striking how, even though these sources might have slightly different angles, critical frameworks, practical case studies, comprehensive overview, they all seem to converge on the importance of understanding diversity, pushing for inclusion, and moving beyond those older, more uniform ideas.
That's a really key takeaway, I think. The field has undeniably shifted in that direction. Now, one of the abstracts mentioned some cautions for scholars studying development in this third wave.
Ah, right. It didn't detail them, but it hinted that studying development now, with all this complexity, presents new challenges.
Yeah, methodological, conceptual. It's not straightforward. The field is still actively debating the best ways to research and understand development through these more critical and intersectional lenses. It's an ongoing conversation.
Which brings us back to the people doing the work on the ground.
Yeah.
Those guiding questions we saw, one was about the responsibilities of higher ed professionals today.
Right. So if we pull everything together, the evolving theories, the critical perspectives, the focus on practice and inclusion, what does that mean for someone working in student affairs or teaching?
Well, it seems like just knowing the old theories isn't enough anymore. You need to be able to, actually use theory in your daily work
Connect theory and practice, yeah.
and really grasp the complexity of student identities, how they intersect. Plus, Being willing to question the status quo, the traditional ways of doing things,
I'm being an advocate, right, for
r-
social justice, for equity, actively working to make the campus more inclusive.
which requires that ongoing learning and reflection we talked about. You can't just rest on your laurels.
Definitely not. The field's moving too fast. So, thinking about all that, for you, what stands out as maybe the most critical part of that role today?
Hmm. It feels like it's not just about helping individual students navigate their path, but also about seeing and tackling the bigger systemic things that might be holding some students back.
Mm.
Creating environments where everyone has a genuine shot at thriving.
I think that really captures the essence of where the field is pointing. It's about both individual support and systemic change.
So wrapping up, the big picture is this major shift, right? From simpler stage-based ideas to these much more complex, critical, intersectional ways of understanding how students grow and change in college.
Absolutely. And the constant effort needed to bridge that evolving understanding with what actually happens on campus policies, programs, interactions, with social justice and inclusion not just as add ons, but as central goals.
It definitely leaves you thinking. As this understanding keeps evolving, how does that change what we even mean by a successful college experience?
Yeah.
What does that look like for different students? And what does that mean for colleges and universities trying to facilitate that success?
That's the big question, isn't it? There are so many factors, and the conversation is far from over.
For sure. Hopefully, this deep dive gave everyone a solid foundation. If any particular idea, maybe critical race theory's application or Chickering's vectors or practical case studies caught your attention,
Yeah.
definitely dig deeper.
Yeah, there's always more to learn in this